La intimidad es mucho más que el sexo. Si quieres saber más, quédate para este episodio completo.
Hey guys, welcome, bienvenido to the Something New show today. We are here in the studio with one of my dear friends, Danisa Suarez, and we are going to maybe hop a little bit between Spanish and English just because this is my friend that I get to do that with. And I'm just so glad you're here today.
Oh, I'm so honored to be here. I love this space.
I know, and you've been traveling all over the world, and so it's been great to nail you down and say, okay, let's get in the studio tonight.
Yes, I was feeling left out.
I know. I needed to get you on the show. So if you are not familiar with Danisa, I want to tell you who she is. She's an author, an international speaker, a successful entrepreneur, and believes that women have God-given potential and purposes also in their marriage. Her gifting, which is speaking about sexuality and identity, has opened many doors in the Hispanic world of television. So she is currently a mental health expert for Noticias Univision Colorado, appearing on the newscast frequently, and a leading sex educator for programs on TBN in Spanish. So you are very famous in the Latino world, but I also know a lot of all of us listen to what you and Jorge teach and what you guys really embody as a married couple. And I just want to say thanks for being my friend, first of all. And thanks for going there on so many occasions. We've had so many great, deep conversations about intimacy and what that looks like. And I just want to say thank you because you are real about it all. You're never, if you could watch her face on YouTube, you can tell she doesn't shy away from the hard topics. So I want to say thank you for never, being careful about the hard. You just go there and you've helped so many people, including a lot of friends of mine and us, just talking about, hey, how can our relationships really have intimacy? And it's not always in a sexual context.
In all of the contexts. Well, first I want to say it's so easy to be friends with you and Jordan because you guys are real too. And we need those kind of friends that you can really open your heart and share and be who you are and share whatever is going on in life and feel supported, heard, and get words of wisdom.
Yes.
So it's very easy to do that part. The job thing came with our passion to be the best that we can be. What God has, in his mind for us as women, as couples, as families. Many times the lies that we believe or that we grew up with, people from traditional church, people that didn't have God or church at all. Like there's so many different things that we hear growing up that don't align with our design. And intimacy being one of those. People hear the word intimacy and they're freaking out already. Oh, it's going to be romantic. It's going to be about sex. Not necessarily. Intimacy has 3 dimensions. There's the spiritual part of it. There's the emotional part of it. And then there's the physical that could be sexual as well. So a family can be intimate. A marriage can be intimate. Friendships can be intimate. Of course, we choose who we want to be intimate with and where we want to invest and spend that kind of energy because it takes effort. It's got to be intentional.
Yeah, it does have to be intentional. And I mean, even in our friendship, you told me years ago, you said, hey, I know I travel a lot. You were the one that traveled a lot at the time. Now I travel a lot too. But at the beginning, you're like, I travel a lot. But even when we can, let's make a point to try and see each other. And I so appreciated that about you. And even sometimes you'll text me and say, hey, I'm in town. Don't forget, we need to hang out. I'm like, yes, that's a good reminder. And, I just have loved when we sit down and talk as couples. It's not just like shooting the breeze. We actually talk about the hard things, like when your husband was doing his doctoral research and all the different things he was studying and mapping out for those research projects. I was fascinated by, but I just love that you are so intentionally going there with even your friendships. So yes. I can only imagine what, your marriage friendship is, but just even with friends, maybe let's start there. Could you talk about how you guys have really tried to cultivate friendships and intimacy and friendship, even though you're so busy, you're entrepreneurs, you travel, you have kids, all the things. How have you been so good at building intimacy with friendship?
Well, one of the things that when you understand that you were created for community life, we were not created in isolation. We were created to live in community, to have family, to have people around us. Then you know that there's that longing in you. And when you know it, then you want to make sure that that space is full, that space is healthy. one of the things that I do is, for example, with you, I'll use you as an example. You had a gathering, we were out of town, and you invited close friends, and we weren't there. But you know what? Why is that? Because we travel so much. So what did I do? Sometimes what people do is they get offended. I wasn't invited. She had that party and I was not invited. But girl, you're not here that often. She can't forget. So I texted you, hey, don't forget me for the next one. What did you do for the next one? Hey, we're having it. We're doing it. So I want to be in your life. I cannot be so sensitive or fragile that if you forgot or if you've been busy or you thought you sent me the text and you haven't, I'm just going to get a little standoffish attitude. No, I'm going to approach you. Hey, that party, like,
I want to come next
it.
time.
I want you. I miss you. I want community. I have a very good friend that we do a lot of things together as well. And when I'm out of the country, and I've been out, we're opening a counseling center in our country, in the Dominican. So we've been going for chunks of times at a time. When I'm there and I'm about to return, I'm texting her, I'll be home on Wednesday. Can we see each other on Friday or Saturday? How's your weekend looking like? So we need to understand the need that we have to live in community.
But what I hear you saying is you're like putting yourself out there, which a lot of people are not comfortable doing. And so I think what you're doing is actually very brave. And I want to acknowledge it because it's probably why you have good friendships. Like you put yourself out there where a lot of other people would say, oh, you know, I'm not wanted, or, oh, they don't want to be my friend. When honestly, it's just life goes busy, starts to happen. And so I love that you have the bravery and the courage to say, hey, I want to be your friend. And obviously, if somebody doesn't respond to that, then you can't force it.
And
you can't force it.
Okay, but we cannot assume that because you are too busy, for example, and I know you are very busy, and you're running a business, you have children, you have a husband, you guys are young, so there's a lot of things going on. But I cannot assume that you're so busy that you don't have time for a phone call if I'm in a pinch, or for a coffee if we need to talk. I cannot assume that. I need to allow you to say, let me make the time for that. Mm-hmm. Or I cannot do it this week, but I can do it next week. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we close the doors ourselves right away. And I feel that is self-sabotage in a way. I want you to tell me, and I am not going to be so fragile that if you say, I cannot do it this week, really. Or can you come and help me do laundry with the kids and we'll talk as we're doing that? Mm-hmm. Like, we need to open ourselves to create that community space and be able to open our hearts and share life things.
And honestly, that's been some of the closest friendship moments I've had, is when people were willing to do real life things with me, and it didn't have to be necessarily a coffee date because maybe I couldn't go for coffee. Yeah. I just had to run 4 errands. But if you want to come with me while I run the errands,
yeah, let's hang out
and do it together. And so I remember when I was new mom, okay, I had one friend, and what we would do is we'd get our kids to bed, and at 10 o'clock, we would go grocery shopping together at 10 o'clock at night.
Yes.
And it was the only time we could see each other. We'd go get our groceries. We'd each have our cart, and we'd share recipes and share about life. And then we'd go back home and keep going. And it was just what we could do at that time in life. And so just having friends, you want to have friends, right, that are willing to say, I will show up however you need to, because if you're not available at all hours of the day, then maybe we figure out a creative way to get together.
We need to want it. And I feel that that's the first acknowledgement. I want it, and I'm willing to pay a price for that. And the investment that we make gives us a return. So be it that we're grocery shopping together, or that we're in each other's hospital visits, or children's weddings, or whatever it is, we're going to be in each other's lives. It's just like a marriage. Mm-hmm. In marriage, there's a lot of things that are busy. And men that have a career, and a wife that has a different career, and children, how do you make it work? People that travel, we are intentional about it. We're not traveling this weekend, or this night is our night and it's not going to be interrupted. You carve that time and you sustain your marriage, even when people have different professions and different schedules even.
Yeah.
But that intentionality needs to exist.
One of my I'm in a group text with some people in my mastermind, and it's been so great. And we share ideas with each other on all sorts of things. But one of the recent conversations was about what's the one thing really helping your marriage right now. And one of the girls wrote, it wasn't a book necessarily or counseling. It was just committing to time together.
Mm.
Like, no matter what, she and her husband like commit to time together.
Yes.
And it could look different. It could be like, you know, some people say date night. Date nights for us don't work because we have 4 kids and activities. So we have to do an early morning walk or a breakfast. We have to get really creative, my husband and I, to spend time together. But I thought that was so brilliant that she's like, it wasn't a book. It wasn't something. It was literally just committing to regular time together.
Mm-hmm.
So I would love to switch to marriage a little bit, or relationships. And I would love to hear your thoughts. Honestly, I am very curious to know, what is the number one thing people come into your office for? Like, what is, like, you guys do so much counseling. I mean, you are always counseling. You're in sessions, intensives, you're in the Dominican, you're here, you get asked to speak on television. What is the number one thing, or maybe give me a couple things that people are really struggling with right now that you get asked to talk about?
Well, the number one thing they think they're coming for is sex. That is what they think. But when we dive into it, we realize that it's intimacy. Sex is not working because they're not connecting emotionally and spiritually the appropriate way. And it doesn't matter. This is not just for people that believe in Jesus. It doesn't matter. Everybody's spiritual. There's a way of connecting spiritually. So when those things are not aligned, then sex is out of whack. It works while you're hormonal, while you're young, a little bit, because you get a little bit of a
There's
hype.
like physical attraction.
But that's about it. It doesn't fulfill you the way that the entire picture does. So that's probably number one. And
so
then
they come in with this problem, and then you guys get a little bit deeper and you realize they're not intimate in their emotions, in their spirit, in their mind.
yes, there's fear to be vulnerable. I'm afraid of sharing my feelings, or when I share my feelings, you dismiss them. They're not important.
Which actually, can I tell you how many people I know that would say they don't want to have sex? They're tired of it or whatever after many years of marriage, but it's because like they don't feel like they're connecting on the personal level, so it feels almost fake to
Yes.
connect on the physical level.
And I can tell you, and you know me,
You're not hiding anything. Yeah.
I'm coming to 34 years married, and sex is better now than it's ever been. But it's because we've matured in our relationship, in the way that we connect emotionally, that we hear each other, try to understand each other, even when we're not in agreement. I mean, you've heard me say before, I have a lot of opinions or things like, you know, you can tell that Jorge and I can have our differences.
Yeah.
Yet we're so happy and fulfilled with each other. But it's because of that. There's safety in being who I am with my goods and bads. And for him being who he is with his goods and bads, it works. It works because it feels safe. So I feel that that's the first issue. And then the second maybe is the communication styles. I'm saying something, but you're hearing something different. And to get people to understand and to try to understand what it is that you're saying, it takes, you know, specific skills. Let's pay attention. Let's really try to paraphrase what they're saying. Let's say it back. Is this what you said? Before we get all upset or we feel
So
that.
in your office, do you try to like translate in a way what the husband's saying to the wife and the wife to the husband? Like, oh, I think what she's really saying is this. Are you translating, or are you also giving them tools so when they go home they can understand each other?
Jorge's the expert at that. So he will stop them and say, okay, what did she say? Say it back to her. And then the husband will repeat it, and she'll say, that's not what I said. And then he'll say, okay, tell me again. And then we'll get at it until they do. And then once it's paraphrased, okay, so now what is your response to that? Because that is the true message. If she said, yes, that's what I said, that is the true message. Now what is your answer to that? So yeah, we give them skills right there. And then we make them practice, like we're very hands-on. I mean, not with the sex therapy part, but
You're like, wait, where's the other part?
with the other parts.
Okay, and what's the third issue? You said there's more.
Sometimes the third one can be the love of money, or there's a competition with extended families. So parents
Tell
that
me,
are...
what do you mean competition?
Well, parents that want to still parent grown-up kids that are already married, and they still want to have a saying. And, you know, they come in the name of God in very good things and wanting to help, but it is not their business anymore. And they always have an opinion into their children's married lives. And when I hear that voice that is so familiar to me, it's kind of hard to disconnect from it and to connect to deciding with my husband what we feel is appropriate for us now, for the new family that we're building.
How do you suggest that somebody, let's say they're newly married or maybe just newly deciding to have this as a new boundary? Like maybe they've been married 10 years, but they're like, we really got to start a boundary or something. What would you say to a new couple or a couple that's just wanting to start this whole different methodology with the parents? How do they communicate that with the parents?
Well, the first thing is stop sharing so much. It is okay to say we're having a challenging week or this week was not as simple, and engage them that way, but don't give details about the things that are going on because that is an invitation. Now, if the parents try to give opinions without even being invited and are nosy or are trying to ask questions, I would sweetly say, I appreciate your concern. You can continue praying for us, but this is something that we want to navigate on our own, or whatever is happening, we want to sort it out first. We're not even sure what's happening. We need the space and the time for God to reveal to us what are the issues that we need to address. There's a lot of different little respectful ways and little lines that we can use with parents that are too intrusive. Or older siblings too. Sometimes it's an older sibling, but like the extended family opinion can be really detrimental.
I can imagine, and especially when you're trying to establish a family.
Yes, because you're figuring out, how do you and I work? Because you are not my mom and I am not your dad. Like, we're two different people. It's not going to come out exactly the same way as where we grew up. Plus, do we really want to repeat everything from where we grew up? No. What are the good things that you want to bring into our marriage from your family? And what are the things that you want to bring into our marriage from your family? That your dad was hardworking and a man of integrity? Great. Bring that on. But the way that he spoke to your mom, and we don't want that. So we need to establish what is it that we want. What are our values?
Do you actually sit down and talk about that?
Oh, yes, we do.
You list out what you want to bring and what you don't want to bring.
Yes. And we do it in the context of always honoring our parents. You can have the worst parents. There is honor in there. There are good things in there. Just the fact that they brought you into the world, that there's merit already there. So we try to build or instill that honoring attitude, loving ways of doing this, yet we're going to do it the way that God said. You're going to disconnect, like the Bible tells you, and you're going to establish your goals.
Your new family.
Yeah, what are your principles? What are the values? What are things that are important to you now?
And something we also chose to do, and I would love your opinion on it, but all those hard conversations, we decided it came better when it was the child of that set of parents. So if it was something a little bit more uncomfortable to share, Jordan would talk to his parents and I would talk to mine. And even though, there might be different dynamics, I just felt like it was a little bit more received when you speak to your own parents. Even though Jordan would be with me, I would be with him. We just decided to be the mouthpiece to the set of parents that
is very wise. That is very wise because it's not like the one that is, parents adopt the in-law kids, but you're not the biological one. You're not the one that they
will never be the same.
Yes. So having those conversations come from their own child, yes, that is the best thing that can happen.
It was really helpful. I'll just tell you. And now I feel like we have a great flow and a great communication, but it was a little bit of muddy, kind of clearing out who says what do we get advice on? What do we decide for ourselves? I'll tell you, when we had to really make a decision for ourselves and realized, oh, we can do this, is when my son had cancer and we had to decide which treatment plan to give him for to save his life. Yes. And there were several different options and different medications that we could have chosen. And we didn't know anything about medicine. So we called a lot of smart people that knew all the things about these medicines. We asked our parents what we should do. Both of our parents said, we cannot help you make that decision. You're going to have to pray and just seek the Lord on that. So we prayed and we decided together which direction, which protocol to do for his treatment. But we really grew up in a lot of ways that day.
You learned to trust yourself.
Yes. We trusted ourselves and each other as a team.
Yes.
And we said, you know what? We love our parents and we often ask their advice. They're very wise people and we look up to them a lot. but we've learned that like we can come together and make decisions.
Yes.
And that was the most important decision we've ever made in our life. And so we're like, okay, if we can do this, we can decide where we go for Thanksgiving. We can decide whose house Christmas dinners is going to be at. You know what I mean? Like those things are easy now. And honestly, they go so much like more with care. I would say because we talk about, hey, what do you want? What do they want? What do we want? How can we come together and have a win-win?
Yes, that is beautiful. The fact that you started trusting each other. I feel that the environment of team, when you build that and, we're in this together.
Yes.
There's the two of us. There's two brains here. There's two sets of faith here. There's your experience on the individuality of what God has done with you and what he's done with me. There's your schooling. There's my schooling. When we bring all that together, like that's a lot. So you start feeling like, yeah, like we are enough. We're enough. So starting to trust one another. Sometimes when we start very young, when you marry young, we make mistakes and we freak out from each other. Like, oh, she made that mistake. Oh, he spent that money. And we lose a little bit of that. But I think when we revise like the journey that we're embarking on, and that you're in the and I'm speaking for the newlyweds, during the first 5 years of marriage, like give yourselves grace. You are going to continue to grow. And if you are looking at what you've done that you feel that was not a good decision or a good choice, allow yourself the opportunity for a do-over, or for that experience to prevent making another mistake. Then you start proving to each other. It doesn't matter that our immaturity like was there in the beginning, or that at this level we're still not at this place. I cannot expect a marriage that has 10 years to behave like a marriage that has 34 years, like mine, because they haven't gone through all the stuff that we've gone through. Nobody has gone through what you've gone through. It's like a 2-year married. They're learning to even accommodate themselves in bed. Like which side is that we're comfortable.
Yeah. Basic.
So having that grace to know we will continue to mature and to grow. We're not going to stay stuck here. If we have that openness, I think that is a very key element in continuing to build a solid team. Us.
Okay, I'm going to ask you in just a second after I talk about my belief in investing in your marriage, but I want to ask you in a second to give us some tips on building intimacy. Okay, give us some tips.
It's going to be a good day. Yeah. Okay? 3, 2, 1. It's showtime!
It's no secret by now that Something New is a special place where we believe life is worth celebrating. We come here every day to make sure people feel loved, welcomed, and brought into an experience of a lifetime. You'll see friendly faces, gorgeous gowns, a well-lit showroom to highlight everyone's natural beauty, and strangers becoming friends. It's a wonderful thing to shop somewhere that listens to you and makes you feel like you're the only one that matters in this most beautiful moment of your life. We'd love to have you and your friends find your dress and become a part of the Something New family.
Before we do, I remember 5 years of marriage. We were 5 years in. We're almost to 20. And Jordan had this realization because I wanted to do this like week-long intensive marriage counseling thing. Mm-hmm. There was no one issue. It was just kind of pricklies is what I would say. I call them little pricklies. And I felt like, oh, I think we need to do this week-long intensive. And he was like, that's a lot of money. We were both teachers. We made $27,000 a year each. And it was tight in Colorado Springs. We were below poverty line. You know what I mean? Like, so, I mean, it was tight, but I just really
Who would have said?
I know. I really wanted to do it. So I just like told him I wanted to do it and let him think about it. He prayed and thought about it. And then he came back to me and he said, you know what I realized is I spend more money tuning up my truck in oil changes, in rotating the tires, and all the things over the years than I've ever spent in my marriage. We did pre-marriage counseling.
For free at church, probably.
No, we did a real one, but
okay.
but still, I know, right? We did like a test and all that, but there was nothing after, nothing. And so it had gone 5 years, and he had this realization that he had spent more money making sure his truck was running properly than he had spent in our marriage to make sure it's strong. Now, I want to say something. It wasn't until 5 years after that that my son was diagnosed with cancer. And it was so amazing that 5 years into our marriage, he said, yes, we're going to make the sacrifice. We're going to do this big week of counseling. It's going to give us the tools we need to be strong. We got so strong that even when they came into our room, as a sociologist says to us, like, the social care worker, she walks into our room right after diagnosis and said, just so you know, most kids whose parents go through childhood cancer end in divorce.
Yes.
The first day, we just got diagnosed, which I don't know why they tell you that on the first day.
No,
Worst
she
thing
should
ever.
have not said that.
We looked at each other and we said, well, we'll be fine. We'll be fine. And we felt so strong about it. We said, no matter what happens to our son, we'll be fine.
I knew I liked Jordan. I didn't know that part, but I knew I liked the man.
Yes. I mean, it took him a few days to get around to that, but I gave him time to think about it.
Yes.
And we did that week-long counseling, and we've been back many times for counseling, but I just like to encourage our listeners. It's like, how much have you spent
Yes.
on so many things? You know, whether that's your car, whether that's your, whatever is important to you. And I don't have a problem with toys and fun trips and everything. But sometimes we forget to invest in the relationship that literally is the foundation of our family.
You're speaking my language, because we have people that will buy a boat, they will buy a motorcycle for the summer, but they will not invest in their marriage in an intensive clinic. And when you think about it, how much money did you invest to become a coach, a professional, legitimate coach with certifications? A lot of money. You don't have these boutique and these businesses of coaching and all these things.
I spent over 6 figures to get to the level of teaching that I am today.
Exactly. So people see you travel. She's teaching a boutique in London. She's coaching in whatever. That didn't come
Overnight.
from nothing. You invested money, to even for a driver's license. We send kids to school. They go through driving lessons. They take a test. Then they take another test. But marriage, we think that we take a little lesson or something and we're set for the rest of our lives.
Right.
I mean, a career, sometimes you do it for 20 years, 25, and then you retire. Some things you do for a while, then you change your mind. But you invested 10, 15 years in that. And then for a marriage, we don't want to invest a few thousands, a few hours, a few days to solidify roots and to get to know each other. I feel that when you're living a life that is open to the will of God and to doing things well, God guides you. So he prepared you with that intensive because he knew what was ahead of you guys. And because you were obedient and he was sensitive to hearing your voice and your need, he did it. Apparently, you didn't have a big need, yet God knew better and put that in you.
We couldn't tell what was coming. We just knew the value of working on the most important marriage was there.
Yes.
And because we got so strong, we were ready for the storms.
Yes.
If we wouldn't have prepared, it's like preparing your house. Like it's for a storm, or building your house on the sand versus the rock. All of that. I'm like, you don't know when life throws a curveball. And honestly, all this can go away, but my marriage and my kids matter so much to me.
Yeah.
And so the perspective change that happens in counseling and all those moments is just powerful.
Well,
But
again, your money goes to what's important to you. Money goes to where the priorities are. And if the priority is to build buildings and things and stuff, that's where it's going to go. But if your priority is to invest it in your children and your family, you're going to be intentional about knowing where to pull that from so that can take place at the same time that you're building buildings and things.
Yep. Okay, what are your tips
All
for
right.
building intimacy?
Okay, so in any relationship, and we'll think marriage, but this applies to business people, to relationships at work, with your children, coworkers, with anyone. Number one, honesty. There's got to be a sense of honesty. That doesn't mean that you're going to disclose your history from day one to today with any person when you're starting to build a relationship, but there's got to be transparency. You need to be an authentic person. I find that as soon as people put on a front or they're guarded or too protected, we sense it.
Mm-hmm.
And then
You can feel it.
It doesn't go. Like you can sustain it at a level, but it's always shallow. There's never like deep roots.
Mm-hmm.
So that authenticity and being open about, transparent about who you are, I think that's number one. Number two, the intentionality. If we are going to do this, we need to be intentional. I need to be intentional with you, to seek you, to spend time with you. I need to value you and have that intentionality about it. Sometimes we want to cash in what we have not put in. Do you want people to be a good friend to you? Have you been a good friend first? So you want a good husband? Have you been a good wife? Sometimes I get wives that they come complaining and whining. Yeah. And I'm the first one that I said, okay, tell me all of the things that you do for your husband, all of the deposits that you've made that you're feeling so depleted and like so not corresponded. That takes some analyzing.
Absolutely.
So, and then the third thing is to know that the grace of God has been given to us, and we need to give that grace freely as well. So we are going to make mistakes, and some things are not going to work. And sometimes I am going to get upset, very upset at you that I feel that I don't like you. But that's not enough of a reason for us to quit the relationship. Let's allow some grace to flow and to come so that we can try to retake where it got broken or where it went wrong. And that takes accepting it for ourselves, experiencing grace ourselves so that we can give it to somebody else. I feel that that's a good start.
Yeah.
For more, they can come for an intensive clinic.
That's so good. Well, and it's real about the forgiving. Like, I always think the people that are quickest to forgive are the happiest.
Yes.
Because you just move on.
We don't hold on grudges. Jorge has been a very good teacher of that to me, because I used to be very like explosive, and then I'm still explosive. But I explode and I come back down. Before, I would stay like at that place. You did me wrong. Yes, but I'm sorry, and I didn't mean to. And I'm telling you, I'm not going to do it again. I'm going to try. Like, it would be hard. But when I started experiencing grace for myself, what God has done for me, how I'm not nice, and I am also unkind, okay, well, then he still likes you and he's still here, then you need to start sharing that. So then it starts flowing, but you need to experience it to be able to give it.
Well, what do you do when both of you don't want to forgive?
That's very unusual because I marry an angel. I marry a saint.
He's always happy to.
He is.
But let's say a different couple. Let's say it's not Jorge.
Yes.
But there are some moments where both of the stubborn, like, no, you did me wrong, and nobody wants to budge or forgive.
Yeah, it's sometimes I feel that the conversation can start to, can I explain why I'm offended? That doesn't mean that I'm forgiving you, but can we at least open communication again? And if we can start by explaining why I'm offended, maybe we'll surface that, oh, that's not what I meant to do, and that will soften a little bit. Okay, then let's engage in the conversation. And out of that, it may come like, okay, I'm sorry. Okay, there's some, and I'm sorry, starting to happen. So even if we reconnect in conversation, I think that's the most dangerous thing, when we just disconnect completely. Try to have a conversation even if you're still not happy, even if you're still mad, even if you still feel that wrong has been done to you and you don't want to be gracious. Try to have the conversation, because most likely something is going to come out of that conversation.
Something I just even shared with my leadership team this week, and we'll be talking about as a team in the next meeting, but something I just shared with my team this week was always assume positive intent. When you assume that of others, you come at everything with a much different angle.
Yes.
You don't come with the defense. If someone did something and you felt like that wasn't appropriate, assume positive intent. They did that probably for a good reason. When you assume that about others all the time, you just look at life totally differently.
Yeah.
I mean, the team little pricklies start to dissolve.
Yes, definitely.
Because you assume, oh, she left already for the day. She must have thought we were done. Not like she left everything for me to do. She must have thought we were done.
Gottman is one of the expert researchers in everything relationship, over 40 years of research. And one of the things that he teaches that one of the fast things to destroy a marriage is contempt or a relationship. And contempt you always have this negative something about somebody that is always percolating in your mind. Like they're always gonna come get me. They always have something like to, and we're always like with that in our somewhere in our minds, in the back of our minds. Well, as soon as you say something, I'm already expecting it to go, it's gonna be negative, and it may not even be negative, and I'm already seeing it in a negative way. And so yes, that attitude of give people commonly they say the benefit of the doubt, like think that they're not after you. But sometimes our insecurity makes us think that people are after us. And
When honestly, people aren't thinking about us.
yes,
Like I'm always like,
we're not that important.
I tell my kids, I tell my kids all the time, like, oh, they're worried about a situation. I was like, can I tell you they're not even thinking about you right now? Like as much as you think they're thinking about you, they're
You're
not
that important.
They've moved on. You know, they're thinking about
Yes.
themselves.
Yes.
Everyone is so self-absorbed. And so, you know, we can worry and we should be concerned about what we say, right? We should be very careful
Yes.
and intentional. But sometimes we can worry about like, oh, what did they think or how did they take it? And that can spiral you down too,
Yes.
because you can start to, you know, build anxiousness inside of you. And I say, they're not even thinking about you anymore. Like they've moved on. So that's important too, to keep, there's, you know, it's just some people listening might be the type that is too vocal about their feelings, and some are maybe overthinkers. We just, I think if we can land somewhere in the lane of, I'm going to be my best that I can, honest, like you said, intentional, forgiving, honest, intentional, forgiving, and then just assume the best of them and then not think too hard about it.
And even Mindi thinking, okay, I'm offended. It may be legit. It's not that I'm sensitive or that I'm making it up. I'm
Like it's real.
offended because of what was done to me. It's wrong. And I'm taking this posture. I challenge people to think, okay, let's put it on a scale. Let's weigh it off. Like, is the relationship important enough for you to deal with this and kind of like let it go and try to come to reconciliation? Or is your relationship not worth it? Do you rather lose the relationship altogether just because of this infraction? It makes you think, well, really, no, he's this, she's that, I have all of these things. So I better work this out. So when we put things in perspective like that, okay, so it's not really all or nothing. Like I can
decide
handle
to like,
that.
yes, you can decide to go there, talk about it, work
I
it out.
can be offended in this. I'll just take another little day to like
Get over
get
it.
it out of my system.
And talk. And sometimes we used to really, when we were newlyweds, we promised that we would never let the sun go down upon our wrath. So we would stay up into the late hours of the night, like 4 a.m. We'd still be like fighting, you know? And I'm not kidding you. We were like, we are not going to bed until we work this out. Well, then we started to have children. We were like, I'm too tired. Are you too tired to talk about this? Yes. So we wouldn't necessarily get to it that night, sometimes not even the next day. We would get to it, though, when we were a little more rested and we could have a good conversation about it.
Well, that's appropriate. That's not letting the sun set, really.
Yes. So I would say to people, too, is like, hey, you might be really committed to a virtue, but deciding, too, that there's an appropriate time and you need to be rested if you're going to go into a really hard conversation.
It's better.
Yes, it is better.
Yeah, we tell our couples it's better. If you need a timeout, just say it. And be the one coming back to initiate the conversation if you're the one who needed that break. Because sometimes we need to chill. We need to process on our own a little bit. I recommend journaling a lot or voice memoing a lot because you hear yourself, you see what you wrote, and then you put it in perspective. You know what? Actually, it's not that deep. It's not that bad. It is bad, but it's not that bad. Then you start scaling. Like you start seeing it a little bit more realistically, and then you have a better way to approach it. What is really what offended me? Was it the delivery or was the item? Oh, it was the delivery because he spoke to me this way. It's not really like, if he would have said that in a different way, okay, well, then it allows us to sort out what's really the problem here and then to address it.
I love it. I love it. Well, Danisa, where can people follow along with what you and Jorge are doing?
Well, I have social media, so I'm on Instagram.
Yeah, what's your Instagram handle?
Danisa Suarez Oficial, and the oficial is a Spanish word. There's not two F's in it. Danisa Suarez Oficial. We like people to know that we're Latinos making a difference in an Anglo world. So we
Oh.
kept some of our Spanish words, like our counseling center is Centro de Consejería International.
I love it.
We're forcing the Anglos to like say the words in Spanish, but know that we're international. So we serve our English speaking community. We're
Yeah,
proud
you
of
do.
that.
You have so many of my friends, that have benefited from your counseling. So, I mean, I think it's awesome that you're international.
So yeah, our webpage is ccicounseling.com.
ccicounseling.com. Okay, awesome. Well, I'm sure many people from today will start following you on Instagram and going to your website, checking out your resources. And I'm so glad we finally got to talk about intimacy
Yes, this
here
was
on the
so
show. This was
good.
so good. So we have a little tradition here where we're going to cheers. So I want to say thank you for being here on today's show, Danisa. And if people like this, cheers.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, if you guys like this episode, I'm sure you got a lot out of it. Definitely comment, like, subscribe, and share with your friends because we're trying to get this awesome show out to the world. All right, we'll see you guys next time on the Something New Show. Have an awesome week. Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe to the show, rate, review, and share with a friend. Also, follow The Something New Show on Instagram and Facebook. If you want a fuller experience, watch the show on YouTube to help you create a life worth celebrating.